Before we get into the episode, I am thrilled to announce that the EntreMD Business School is open for enrollment. The EntreMD Business School is the only school of its kind for physicians who want to build 6, 7, and multiple 7-figure businesses. Over the last 2 years, we have had hundreds of doctors go through the school with unbelievable results. Some of them run brands, some of them run private practices, some of them are coaches, some have other kinds of service-based businesses or product-based businesses. And we've had people come in and cross the 6-figure milestone, cross the 7-figure milestone, cross the multiple 7-figure milestone. You will be in a place where you'll get the coaching, the community, the accountability that you need to thrive as an entrepreneur, especially in the times that we're in. So maybe you've been following me for a while. Maybe you've been getting so much out of the EntreMD podcast and you've been wondering, how can I work with Dr. Una and the community more? Well, this is your chance. Come join us in the EntreMD Business School. It is application only. So go to entremd.com/business to turn in your application. I cannot tell you how many doctors have made statements like this. I recovered my investment in the first week. I recovered my investment in my bank account in the first 90 days. This is the best investment I've made in myself ever. I want you to have that kind of story, not just a story of building a great business that serves a lot and earns a lot, but having a business that gives you the freedom to live life on your terms. So don't wait any longer. entremd.com/business. And now for the episode. Hi, docs. Welcome to the EntreMD podcast, where it's all about helping amazing physicians just like you embrace entrepreneurship so you can have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on your terms. I'm your host, Dr. Una. Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the EntreMD podcast. And I have a fantastic guest on here today, the amazing Dr. Weili Gray. And I'm so grateful because she's going to take us behind the scenes of the journey of an entrepreneur, podcaster, like the whole 9 yards. And this is going to be a great conversation. So I want you to lean in and get ready to enjoy it. So Dr. Gray, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Una, for inviting me. I'm just so honored. I remember the first time I was invited to the show, it was my first podcast interview ever. And I was scared, but I did it anyway. And to be invited a third time is just an amazing honor. Thank you. And this is a life-changing podcast. I know it is for me and for all those who are listening. And I always try to share it with more and more people, Dr. Una. So this is such an honor.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the shares. You know my BHAG. I'm trying to get to 100,000 doctors one way or another. You said something that I think we should just go ahead and start from there. You talked about it being your first podcast guest spot and you were scared, but you did it. And I have watched you for years at this point, and you look at all these scary things and you embrace them. Now, when I did a poll in the EntreMD Facebook group, I was like, hey, what stops doctors from embracing entrepreneurship, like either starting businesses or building their businesses to be bigger? And fear came up so many times, like fear of failure, fear of success, fear of what people think, fear of, all of that. So you've managed to do everything you've done and you don't let fear stop you. How come?
Yeah, I think you were the first to put it in a framework for me and a lot of my classmates. That was like a light bulb moment. And I think before that, I sort of intuitively understood it, but didn't quite like verbalize it. And you said, your danger zone is actually your comfort zone. And so if you are always, if you're fearing something and you're avoiding it, you're just staying exactly where you are. And that is actually, where we're stagnant and we don't grow, and things are just going to be exactly the way they are if we don't do anything different. And so I've actually learned to feel the fear and then to embrace it. It's a fun journey. And I would say that if I look at, and it's not just entrepreneurship, it's just in life in general, whether it's, finding a life partner, having kids, or, going on a trip, trying a new hobby. If I embrace the fear, I even, like traveling to a new country, I always have a fear. I'm like, oh, what if I get robbed? What if, they lose all my luggage? There's always a fear there. but it's because it's a new thing. It's because, I don't do it every day. And so when we embrace that fear, that's that, like the prequel to something really exciting happening.
Love it. So embrace the fear and understand that it's just a teaser. It's showing you like, oh my goodness, there's good stuff on the other side. I love it. Okay. So of course, we went all the way there, but now I'll allow you to introduce yourself to to the listener. But it was so good when you said that. I was like, I have to pull that out first.
Yeah. Yeah. So my name is Weili Gray. I am originally trained as an anesthesiologist. That was my primary specialty. And then I did a fellowship in sleep medicine. And that is what I practice exclusively now. I am a hospital employed physician in rural Vermont. And that I love doing what I do as a doctor. And I'm happy to, share more my story. But at one point I thought, I think I want to leave medicine. I just felt so discouraged being a doctor. And I thought, the only thing I can think of, to avoid this pain is to leave medicine. And then one day I realized that I love doing what I do. And I look at my medical school essay, the essay that I wrote to get into medical school, and like all of that is true. And it's like a calling for me. I just love seeing patients. And so I do that. And I also am the CEO and founder of Dare to Dream Physician, where I help physicians discover what they really want out of life and then to live that dream life sooner than they ever imagined. And I am a registered life planner. So I work one-on-one with clients and we just, talk about what is it that they really want in their life? And to really, when we figure out what it is that we want, to start living that as soon as possible, because we don't want to wait 20 years until we're retired to start living, because we don't even know if we have that long to live. Life is not guaranteed. And so I do that. And I also have a weekly podcast with a Dare to Dream Physician. And I do events, I speak, and this is just, I would say, I'm coming up on the second year of joining EntreMD. It's maybe a year and 9 months at this point. I just cannot imagine, how amazing this journey has been. And I just feel so much more satisfied in my life as a physician, as a human being, as mom. And this has just been an amazing, amazing journey.
Oh man, love it. And if you're listening to the podcast, I wish you could see her on YouTube because she's just lighting up like a bulb. Okay, so questions here, because now you've brought up so many things. One of the things is that, you love medicine and you thought about leaving medicine, but it was just because of all the things that were going on. And so I love your story because I say that what we do in EntreMD is not make people quit medicine. It's like find out your version and do that, like whatever that is. So how has learning entrepreneurial skills, even as a, full-time doc, how has that changed your journey, changed your experience as an employed physician?
Yeah. Yes, so much. And actually, I wanted to clarify, ever since I started being an attending, technically on paper, I'm a part-time doctor. But as we all know, between all the other things that all the other tasks that we have to do, and really does end up being a full-time job. So my husband will say, oh yeah, she works more than 40 hours a week. But on paper, I am a part-time sleep physician with some sort of extra sleep studies that I also read on my quote days off. But so many, Dr. Una. And what's so interesting is, even after my first year in the EntreMD business school, I learned even more skills. And I just keep applying what I'm learning as what we call an intrapreneur, which is, like an employed physician who's using those entrepreneurial mindset at work. And so one is, when you're an entrepreneur, the world is your oyster. You feel like you have options, you have choices. You are the main character in the story of your life, as opposed to, kind of more of the employee mindset where you're just like, well, you're hoping you don't get laid off at work. And, you're hoping there's not going to be a big change. So when I go to work as an employee, I go there to be engaged. I think of going to work as sort of, this is, I'm the CEO of my life. And I'm going to put that attitude in my work, meaning, I show up engaged. I want my practice to succeed, even though I'm not the practice owner. And I speak, I will be proactive in working with the referral sources and, to make relationships with them. And I do it all because I enjoy it. So it's not like somebody's making me. So that I think is a win-win because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm feeling like I have control over my work. And I mean, if you're an employer, who doesn't want a worker like that, right? They want somebody who's going to show up. And just like Dr. Una shared her first year as an employed physician after her residency, she was doing such a great job that the practice owner wanted to keep her for like 5 more years.
Yep, 5 whole years.
Yeah. And it's I mean, everybody benefits from showing up as the boss and as, sort of that with that entrepreneurial mindset. And then there's the other thing, which if I'm going to show up to work with that kind of attitude, let's say there are things, as a not as the practice owner that I don't have control over. There are certain things. I mean, I do my best to present, my points of view and my, there's always going to be things as a physician that you are going to have privilege understanding of that, an administrator or a practice manager are not going to. And I believe it's our responsibility and our job to be able to communicate that so that they understand what's needed for the practice to succeed as well. But there may be physicians out there, and maybe one day that may be my position where I'm at a place where I wouldn't feel like that is being welcome. And when I think of myself as the CEO of my own life, if that does happen one day, it wouldn't be a very hard decision for me to pivot. And I think that's where the choices and the freedom of being the main character in your own life story comes out, right? So I don't feel like I'm at the mercy of my employer. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to help them succeed and help me succeed as, as a physician there. But I am also not going to feel stuck, if I ever get in that position. And so that is priceless. And I would say that is really the defining moment in my shift as a physician where I no longer felt trapped. And, once I had that shift, I didn't have to worry about burnout anymore because I felt like I had the power to really change the world if I wanted to do that.
Love, love, love. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that on one side, you're creating this win-win, right? And I can only imagine that they would love to keep, because I'm an employer and I love people who create win-wins. Like they're my favorite kind of people in the universe. And so you're creating win-wins and you're enjoying what you do. You're showing up engaged and all of that stuff. On the other hand, you're in a position where you're not stuck because you're like, I'm the boss. If this no longer works for me, I can pivot. I'm not stuck. I have choices here. And I can communicate and negotiate and all of those things because of all these skills that I'm learning, which is phenomenal. Have you ever had to do any hard negotiations?
Oh, yes.
Difficult conversations no one wants to have.
And it really, being an EntreMD also helped me understand the sort of the practice owner point of view too, so that when I show up at the table to negotiate, I already understand what they want and how they're thinking and where they're coming from. So one example of, and by the way, I don't even think of them as negotiations anymore. I think of each sort of, what we call negotiation as an opportunity, right? As an opportunity to have mutual understanding of needs, and then also to create a win-win situation, like you said. So one example was when I negotiated for a scribe. And so that the seed was planted actually in EntreMD, even though Dr. Una didn't talk about scribes or anything like that, but she did have this session where we talked about, how we need to prioritize our time, kind of think of ourselves as CEOs and to delegate tasks, right, that others can do. Because there's only so many things that we can do. If we sort of offload these tasks that others can do, it will help us be better CEOs of our own lives. And whoa, that was so mind-blowing the first time I heard that. And it was mind-blowing the second time I heard that. This is one of those lessons that come through EntreMD, probably a few times a year at least. And That's when I had planted the seed and I thought, I love being a doctor, but the charting part, like a lot of physicians, is really not my favorite. And I don't know, it may be partly my specialty too. There's a lot of charting we have to do to justify things like sleep studies. And so to insurance companies. So I felt like it was even more onerous. And I just had this realization, like, I don't have to do my own charting. There is a thing, there is a service out there, where somebody else can do your charting as you're talking. And then by the time you're done talking, most of it is done and I just need to edit it. And so I had that idea and I actually met up with a company and they showed me a demonstration. And then I'm like, your demonstration is geared towards practice owners. I'm an employee. I don't know how that's going to work, but they sent me a sample contract anyway. So they got me all the details. And the next time at my work where there was an opportunity to have a discussion because there was, some transitions happening at work where I needed to have more responsibilities. And I didn't want to, step back, cut down on my FTE because like I said, I like seeing patients. So I brought this idea up to my administrators and it was, and this is something I want all the physicians to realize is that just because they don't, open their arms and welcome this idea and say, oh, yeah, definitely, we'll definitely do this. Don't expect them to do that. Okay. By the way, it's a process. So I introduced this idea. Of course, they weren't going to say yes the first time around, but I got the topic on the table and then we kept talking about it. There was a proposal for an arrangement, for my role. And then I said, yeah, there's some challenging parts to that. But if we add this, I'm able to do what we need to do. Like you're asking me to do a little bit more and, this would make up for it. And eventually, there was a lot of back and forth, but eventually they went for it. And what I love was it was fine. I mean, the thing that's really interesting thing is, the people who I was talking to, the CEO of my hospital, the other sort of executives, they all had their own scribes. They're called executive assistants. So the concept is not foreign.
That is a good way of putting it. They all have scribes. They're just called executive assistants.
Yeah, it's not a foreign concept. In fact, a lot of the things that we as physicians were like mind blown. We're like, that would be amazing, but we could never get that. I mean, it exists, most sort of executive level people who have maybe not even as much education or as many years in, work as we do, they have it. So so anyway, that was such an amazing win-win because I was happy because I said, I could accept what you're proposing, but I'm worried that I might get burned out. I might feel resentful. Like I have all this, you're asking me to do all these things. But once I came up with a solution for them and I said, even have a sample contract if you want to look at it, they appreciated that. They're like, yeah, let me look at it. Because I already picked out a place and, this is why I like this place. And in the end, it was a win-win because I walked away not feeling resentful. Their physician retention right there. And they were okay with the numbers. So, this is the beginning. And Dr. Una, I mean, the amazing thing is, I think that was maybe a year and a half ago. Anyway, a year and a half later, when our hospital was going through some other changes and there was some difficulty with retention of physicians and associate clinicians, they offered it to anybody who wanted it. So they said, here, we know this is we know that you guys are going through a hard time, a lot more administrative burden. If you want to scribe, just let us know. We'll sign you up for one.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is amazing. So that is like institutional change that you triggered.
Yeah. And the thing is, I just did the next thing and the next thing, right? It started with the seed that Dr. Una helped plant in my mind. And then I sort of waited for a good time, to present this as a solution. And I mean, it wasn't easy working with the scribe because, there's a lot of turnover, but every step of the way, I use a lot of EntreMD type of techniques and solutions that I learned to guide me through it. And ultimately, that is, I mean, we can't underestimate, the influence of one person. And I wasn't even trying to affect change. I was just, thinking of the next solution and the next solution.
Yeah. And I think that really goes to the power of, being an example or being a trailblazer or doing something for the first time, we don't realize that, we're rewriting scripts by doing that. We don't realize who we're touching. I don't think we know. I think at the end of our lives, we'll be like, wow, what a ride. And who would have known? You know what I mean? I think that's what happens. So that's so powerful. And think about your CEO being with a group of CEOs and somebody else is talking about his hospital and how, they're having problems with retention. It's like, oh, we did this in my hospital. Like you're never going to know the impact of what you did. So that is fantastic. And so you're just a clear example of what can happen as an intrapreneur, right? Like, so even if you didn't have anything else, you're still creating a career, your dream career. And so you are practicing medicine, you're living life on your terms, the way you want to do it, which is fantastic. But you're even more amazing because then you have the podcast, you're doing the life planning and all of that stuff. So before we even get into that, how do you find the time?
I have to say, I definitely got better with time management. Also, as part of the what I learned in EntreMD, right? I mean, I have to say, when I finally found scribes that were, kind of able to scribe for me in the way that I wanted, which again, I had to use some of the EntreMD skills to help that process too. Life was just so much easier because I didn't have to stay up hours after work to chart and sort of the energy too. Like it was the energy. And it was time and energy. And I realized that I wasn't being selfish asking for these things because I mean, like we were saying of the example of the CEOs and the other executives, they don't have to write notes on what that meeting was after they had the meeting. So that was huge. I think also the Dare to Dream Physician is, the name of my business and where I go work one-on-one and in groups with clients to do life planning and also doing the podcast. And I used to spend hours editing my podcast against the advice of Dr. Una. I had to learn this on my own. And then I found a really amazing virtual assistant who I taught her, this is how I usually edit, and I showed her how to use the software that I use, and that's freed up so much of my time. And I'm happy every week or every 2 weeks, when she sends me an invoice, I'm like, great, I get to pay her, which means those are the hours that I saved. And so it's understanding some of those concepts that we learn in EntreMD, but also when I do what I love and I take out the parts that drain my energy, it's not as tiring. I mean, even if I go home late, I'm like, I go home with a smile and I'm happy, as opposed to before where I go home and I was drained and I didn't even want to say hi to my kids and I just wanted to hide in the closet.
Okay. And every mother who has more than 2 kids understands that, right? It's like, yes, we park our cars, we sit down in the garage for a minute before we go in. But now things are different and that really is amazing. So it sounds like a lot of, there is the time management, there is a delegation, and I'm really big on building a home team, building a business team, like everything you do, build a team around it. So you have the capacity to do more through people. So you're physically doing less, you know what I mean? And you can enjoy all of it. So that is amazing. Amazing. Okay. So your life planning, I want you to talk about some of the wins you've gotten, like with your favorite clients, right? So life planning, they do that. Then what?
Yeah. So, it's so interesting because, and you do this with us as part of EntreMD too, but it's not something that most human beings do, which is sitting down, doing some reflection. You'll giving us the time and the space to reflect on what's really important to us in our life. And the way I ask questions in life planning is we sort of think, okay, well, we didn't have to worry about money. What would your life be like, right? If we didn't have to, or what if the money situation is the same as it is now, but then you only have 5 to 10 years left in your life? What would that life be like? And the last part is, what if you were to die today? What kind of regrets would you have? What did you not to get to do who did you not get to be? What did you miss? Right. So some of those are very hard questions. They kind of start kind of more like fun questions, like, oh, we don't have to worry about money. Who doesn't want to think about that? And then, you kind of go through and it gets more serious. And out of those answers, we sort of start pulling into, well, what's really important to us at the end of the day or at the end of our lives. And then we just, then being able to verbalize it and have someone try to pull it out of you, really, like give us more information on that. Give me more details. Like, let's try to imagine that. And so that's what I do with my clients is I give them that chance to really sit down and not worry about what other people are telling them. Like, oh, this is what's possible, or the next step in your medical career is this, right? Because we've already been prescribed from A to Z what we're supposed to do from the time we're in pre-med to the time we're attendings. And so to be able to have the space and the energy to do that is so satisfying. And it's what helped me change my life too, because then I started feeling really connected to, oh, this is why I'm here. What sort of things do I want to do? And I realized that, that's actually how I realized I want to do medicine. Actually, I don't want to escape from medicine. I want to do it. And so one client who comes to mind is just this amazing earlier career physician. She's a researcher, very rigorous background with training, MD, PhD, all of those credentials. And she finally, gets to her sort of dream job. She's at like her first attending job, and she reached out to me and said, I heard you, on a podcast actually. And, this is exactly what I need. I just need to figure out what it is that I really want. Now I have an opportunity to sort of start my dream life after all those years of training. And we we did that. We started going through all those questions, and she reflected back on, what's important to her. And she's just started, she was an action taker, which you talk about how taking action is important for entrepreneurship. Taking action is also important for anybody that wants to live their dream life, because it's only through action that we know what is it that we really want. Because you could sit there and think, well, I want this. Well, take the next act, the smallest step that you can take toward that thing that you think you want, and you will get a better idea. And you will also get energy to start doing more. Like, so, because it seems like, oh, if I want to, let's say, if I want to quit my job and, volunteer at medical missions for the rest of my life. Well, that sounds really overwhelming. Like, how would you do that? Well, why don't you just take a week and work in a medical missions, and that'll give you some energy to keep going if that's really what you want. So with this doctor, she's just such an amazing person. So she was an action taker. So, the moment she came up with one thing like, oh, I really like this kind of music, and I stopped listening to it because I was so busy in training, and now I actually have time, but I haven't done it. And then all of a sudden she reconnected with that side of herself. And so it's just one thing after another. And at the end of our program, which probably took place over about 2 months, she was a new person. She's like, she was telling me, what I try to do in life planning, but I didn't tell her. She said, yeah, I realized that I just need to start living my dream today, not wait until, 10 years or 20 years. And she was just feeling it. I could just see a change in how she was. And even some of the things that were difficult for her, she's just started taking that next step. And it was just so amazing to see that change and that energy.
That is so rewarding. I mean, like that makes it worth everything, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So question, inquiring minds want to know. So you said that you are going on your second year in the EntreMD business school. So inquiring minds want to know why. I mean, like,
Oh, this, this is, I'm going to quote one of my classmates who says, I think I'm going to be a lifer. she made up a term. I'm going to be an EBS lifer. So it's different every year. And as you say, Dr. Una, like even you read you give us book assignments, which I love that, I love we started doing that last year. And even if you read this book, even if you heard this lecture, even if you heard this workshop, the version of yourself that heard it a year ago is going to be different than you today. If we're doing the right thing, which is, we are continually growing and we're continuing up level our self-concept, then, when you even hear the same content, it's going to it's going to be different. And so that is part of it, is that it's now part of my life plan and part of my life goal to be in a community where I can always keep growing. And as physicians, there are more and more communities like that out there. But if you just go to work every day, that's probably, it's just very different, right? It's a very different mindset. Most people we know in real life, whether it's at work or, through other settings, is not really going to understand that. And not to say that I don't want to hang out with them, but I also need to recharge, in a group of people who are there to grow, who are there to sort of, not be overwhelmed when stumbling blocks come, but just see them as, the next stepping stone to something better. And it's that protecting our mind, protecting our dreams. It's so important to do that in community.
And I'm happy you're in the community. You're a valuable part of the community. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to build a business, I am 1,000% committed to my business, then there is a place where there are people 1,000% committed to you. And that is the EntreMD Business School. So we invite you to, turn in your application. It's application only, entremd.com/business. And we would love to have you in there. You get to be in a community with people like Dr. Gray and all the other people. There's actually a whole hashtag, like hashtag EBS for life. I'm like, okay, I can roll with that hashtag. That's good. I'll tell you something fun, though. I don't even think I've talked about it on the podcast. When I created the school, the tagline was, in my mind, I never told anybody, was the business school you'll never want to graduate from.
Aw, that's certainly true for me.
But I couldn't say, some people are like, we've never seen this, we don't know what this is and all of that. So I didn't say it then, but if you look at my journals from then, that was the tagline for the business school. And that's the reason we work on it the way we do. But somebody's listening to this and they're like, life planning, I want to know more about that. So where do people find you, Dr. Gray?
Yes. So first of all, every week I put out a podcast episode on my Dare to Dream Physician podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms out there. So go on there. If you haven't already, type in Dare to Dream Physician podcast and hit subscribe. It's I have just inspiring conversations with so many different doctors. Many of them are in the EntreMD Business School who I just learn something from them every day, which is why I keep doing it every week. And so, and you get to hear these amazing conversations. And I am sure that, the listeners get a ton of value out of that. And as far as life planning, I currently, as Dr. Una knows, I'm sort of living my own life plan. I have a lot of really fun things happening this year, including traveling and, to all these different places. I'm going to Hawaii later this week. And so I am only able to take on a handful of one-on-one life planning clients, just because I want to make sure I can dedicate the time needed for them. And so I don't have anything on my website. My website is daretodreamphysician.com. I currently don't have a way to sign up for a program up there. Sometimes I do. But currently, if you're interested and you're listening to this podcast, just reach out to me on DM. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, just as my name, Weili Gray, MD, Weili Gray, MD on LinkedIn. Just DM me and a Dream Physician on Instagram. And yeah, just let me know if you're interested. I love working with clients, especially I have a special place in my heart for one-on-one because that's where I see, all those light bulbs come on. And it is so, it is so rewarding.
All right, people, I will tell you this, and Dr. Gray, you know that I'm not about flattering at all, but her podcast is a podcast you do want to subscribe to. And the reason why I say that, there are many reasons, but one of them is she is such a great interviewer. Great. And I told you this after I interviewed on your podcast, right? She's such a great interviewer. And so she's so present, so in the moment. And so she's able to ask the most amazing questions to pull out the things you actually need to hear. So it's a really good podcast. So you want to subscribe to that. And I guess we're on EntreMD, so we're special. So you can send her a DM since she doesn't have anything on her website for regular people. So thank you, Dr. Gray. This was so good. Now, at the time of this recording, we are recording this the day before the Made for More book launches. And that is a book that was written by 47 doctors from the EntreMD Business School. Dr. Gray is one of those authors. And Dr. Gray, I want you to tell the listener why they should get a copy and they should go read your chapter.
So this book is going to be a game changer for physicians in the year 2023, which is why it's coming out in January. And the title of the book is called Made for More. And that's exactly why you should go pick it up, because we as physicians are all made for more. And if you ever had a time in your life or your career where you felt like you were belittled, or you felt like, I just don't like the way I'm being treated or the way I'm feeling. And I thought that there was more to being a doctor. When I wrote my medical school essay and applied and, studied for the MCAT, I thought there was going to be more. And the thing is, there is more, right? All of us are made for more and we all deserve more. And that's exactly what this book is. 47 physicians sharing their stories, very similar problems, right? Where we just feel like we're being limited. This is, there's got to be more out there. And 47 different solutions of, what's important to each physician and how they came up with their way of going for more. And so that more may be different for everybody, but it's the theme that, this is what we have in common, and you'll get so many different ideas. I am sure you're going to resonate with many of these stories. And I believe the title of, I haven't actually got my hands on the book yet, but when I submitted it, my title was called Purpose-Driven Physician. And I just, shared some of the difficulties that I had, from the time I was an intern to, going through, I had a baby in my intern year, and there was just a lot of struggles that I had through the training and the early part of my career. And then, like I said, I had that sort of flip moment, and many physicians did. So if you haven't had that moment, I know you can, and just pick up this book, because that will be the beginning.
Dr. Gray, it is Purpose-Driven Physician, and it is chapter 1. Just so you know.
I was shocked when Dr. Una shared with me that that I was the first chapter. I'm so honored, and I'm just so excited. It's coming out tomorrow, and I can't wait to get my copy, and I can't wait to share with many of my physician friends.
Yeah, I'm beyond excited about it, and I think you talked about the win-win, right? And I think it's a win-win-win, right? The physician community is going to win because we're going to see all these examples of what is possible. So many variations, like a buffet. Like, what do you want? Take a pick, like that. And then for the authors, the power of contribution, that is insane. And the elevation of your brand and all of those things that go with it. And then for me, my driving force is, I want us to disrupt the craziness that is going on in the physician community. It does not make any sense to me that the smartest people, like some of the smartest people in the entire country, have been brought to this place where we're stuck, we're burnt out. There's no autonomy. We're telling other people, don't come to medicine, pick another career. There's financial insecurity. Like I just cannot for the life of me figure out how this happened. And I would love nothing more for us to be able to topple that, and where, like your experience, where burnout is a thing of the past, getting back control is where we are. You love medicine. You're financially secure. Like that's where we should be as doctors. And it's not because of entitlement. It's just that we gave up too much time, too much effort, too much in school loans and all of those things, to not at the end of it have a return, right? Like we gave all of that because we want to serve, we want to do all of that, but we should do all of that and have a life. Like we gave up a lot of life so we can have a life. You know what I mean? Like we can't give up all of that and then give up all that's left. We should be able to live life on our terms. So I'm really excited about it. Dr. Gray, thank you so much. This was so good. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Una. And I am just so inspired by what you are doing, because I remember, first learning about this podcast and meeting you 2 years ago. And I mean, it felt like it was 20 years ago, especially given how much EntreMD has grown. And yeah, you continue to be an example. And as you know, everybody in the school thinks so highly of you. So for those of you who are not yet in EntreMD Business School, in this school, we are always sort of in awe of, seeing Dr. Una as our example, and all the things, the community, and also the leadership that we get in this school. So I would love to see you on the inside. And, if you have any questions, please, reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And thank you for doing that. That's so good. All right, people. I don't know. This was like so fantastic. Okay. One of the things that you can do to be part of the Calvary is take this episode, share it with another doctor. You can tell, especially our intrapreneurs, right? Because they're like, I don't have a private practice. I don't have this. I want you to share this with them. And let's create that ripple effect of change in the physician community, because we are set on this. The intention is set and it's going to happen. We are going to get to this point where the vast majority of physicians are there, they fall back in love with medicine. They're living life. They're practicing medicine on their terms. So share it, and I'll see you on the next episode of the EntreMD podcast. Hey, if you love listening to the EntreMD podcast, I want to invite you to join EntreMD On Demand. It is my signature subscription program that gives you access to a library of business courses designed to help you do one thing as a physician entrepreneur, and that is to thrive. Just head out to entremd.com/on demand, and I'd love to have you join us. See you on the inside.